want to thank the Dean for allowing us to come into this facility today. I really appreciate it. Most of us, those who've been here any length of time, remember when ECC was built, and it has gone through a number of changes, a number of wonderful things, and then a number of issues of challenge, and now it's back again. So we're just pleased because it's located in the community. It is our facility, and I want to thank Dean Lucas for having us here today. I'm Assemblymember Shirley Weber. I represent the 79th Assembly District, and this facility is not in my district, but most of you are. And so that's all that really matters. We wanted to have a facility in a community that was close to the 79th and the 80th and the people of this community that really represent sometimes the heart and soul of all the folks south of Interstate 8. So I'm pleased to have you here today. This is an important event. This is our Census Townhouse for 2020. And we know that every 10 years, the government takes upon itself the challenge of trying to count every person that's that lives within the United States. And the purpose of that, of course, is to provide, hopefully, adequate resources into those communities based on the number of people who live there. We know that populations shift periodically, and as a result, we have to make sure that there's enough an adequate representation of those that are there. The census is very important every 10 years, and so often, over the years, people have been undercounted or miscounted or whatever it may be, and as a result, the resources have not gone in the place that we think it should go with regards to the people who live in the state of California, but also more importantly, people who live in the United States. So it's very important. This is important. I know someone says there's some important things going on today, like Comic-Con and those kind of things. Well, I don't necessarily think Comic-Con is fine if you are owning the hotels of San Diego and the restaurants downtown, and you can make money on Comic-Con. Otherwise, if you at Comic-Con and not here, then you the joke. And so as a result, I hope if you're not here, it's because you have a business downtown and you plan to make an awful lot of money so that you can help with the count that is going to occur in 2020. I was approached by Ellen Nash and Elise Allen, who are our true activists in the community, because they had been attending meetings on our behalf dealing with the count 2020. And they were very concerned that communities of color south of 8 were not going to be adequately represented. That oftentimes even the organizations that were in charge of the resources that the state had put into it were not going to be counting everyone that we think is important that should be counted. The count will determine how many individuals represent you in Congress. It will determine how many congressional representatives we have in San Diego County. It will determine how many, what our lines are like in the state assembly. Some of you still upset that you don't live in my district anymore because you live in Webster instead of living just across the street from Webster on Euclid. Some of you upset called me from Gompers and discovered that Gompers is no longer in my district. And it's somewhere else. They go, how did all that happen? Well, it happened during the census. So it's important to pay attention to the count, to the numbers that will eventually be drawn, and the persons who will be making those decisions. The census process has begun, so I feel sometimes like we're late in the game. It has begun, and pretty soon the applications that you'll discover for those who serve on the census, the due date is coming up real soon. And so those of you who think you'd like to serve in that capacity and work that way, it's important that we apply, that we get engaged, that we're involved, and that we not rely upon other people to make decisions for us. So it's extremely important. This is an important event because the state has invested a lot of money in it. In the past, we've invested $5 million, $20 million, I think 10 years ago. This year, we've invested over $200 million in the census this year from the budget. And so that means this must be important. We have 10 times funded what we have done in the past. And so this effort to talk about counting, to talk about making every vote, every person count is extremely important. Having a redistricting committee that is representative of everyone in this room is extremely important. The money that goes into the count is important. When you talk $200 million, you're talking about people with jobs. And you're talking about those who are going to represent you. And all of you should be thinking in those terms, and not as an outsider, but as an insider and a participant. So I want to thank you for coming here today. Someone says I was on the panel. No, I'm not. I am the person who has the ability to call the folks from Sacramento and all around to come together and talk about this. If I seem a little tired, as I just left LA from a youth conference that we put on by the Black Caucus and for our Young People Leadership Conference. And one of the things that they consistently expressed to us, one, their appreciation. We had 100 young people at Dominguez Hills, learning about legislation, learning about the government, learning about themselves and how they participate and how they fit in this world, young African-American students. But they all consistently thanked us for, one, our role models and our help with them, but they also reminded us that they needed us to do more. They needed us to be greater mentors. They needed us to intervene in the system on their behalf, their high school students. And they want to make sure that whatever we got, that we make sure that they have at least that, if not more, when they enter their colleges and the workforce that's there. So we have a tremendous challenge, not only just to make sure our space is good, but to make the space is good for future generations who come along. And being involved in the census is one of those ways. I want to thank my staff always at the beginning, because oftentimes staff gets thanked at the ending when no one's in the room. And yet they are the ones who make this happen. I want to thank Lee Hernandez here. My staff in Sacramento who works on the census, Victoria Harris, who come in. I want to thank them for putting this together, and I really welcome all of you here, and I'm going to turn it over to Ellen Nash, who's then going to kick off this panel. So once again, thank you so very much for being here. Staff will kill me because I didn't tell you about a whole lot of stuff that's coming up. I'm not good at making announcements. I'm just not good at it, but they gave me a whole package. Okay. One, our health fair back to school will be August the 10th. And this will be kicked off at O'Farrell Charter School. It's from 10 to 2. Most of you know it's a health fair, so we have all kinds of good things. We have vouchers for young people to get eyeglasses, and there'll be testing for mammograms for parents. It's a health fair, but it also gives backpacks to kids and a lot of information and workshops on going back to school. We also have our community recognition ceremony that we have every year, August the 23rd, and that will be at the Second Chance on Imperial Avenue in their auditorium. This is where we bring together all the folks we've honored during the year. We do a lot of things in Sacramento, like we honor our small business person, we honor our Woman of the Year. We do a number of things, and you don't get a chance to see them because it happens in Sacramento on the floor of the Assembly. So we like to bring in all of our honorees at one time and have a celebration of all of them so members of the community can see the persons who really worked hard in the community. Our unsung heroes, our small business, our nonprofit of the year, our veteran of the year, our volunteer of the year, and our young legislators. So we will be recognizing all of them on August the 23rd. If you go on our website, you'll see that from 3 to 5. Also, we have an apprenticeship and a vocational training career expo that's going to take place here at ECC on September the 19th from 9:30 to 11:30. This is extremely important because as we look at the apprenticeship programs that are out there, many of our young people are not taking advantage of it. They're excellent programs that enter the field of construction, so I want to make sure that you know that we'll be bringing in some of the schools, but if you're not in a school that's involved and want to be there, September the 19th from 9:30 to 11:30, you can participate. And lastly, most of you know AB 937 passed the Assembly and the Senate. That's the bill that deals with the use of lethal force, that redefines when lethal force can be used in the state of California. It's the first bill that is a statewide bill, not just a city bill, but a statewide bill on the use of lethal force. It will be the strongest lethal force bill in the nation. It was passed by the Senate and the Assembly with less than, with only 3 no votes in both between the two houses, and it will be signed into law on August the 12th. In the morning, I think at 10 a.m., August 12th in Sacramento. You are all invited. Yeah.
Let's give Dr. Weber one more. We just want to thank her for putting on this Census Town Hall meeting. Actually, BAPAC was off the hook this time. The staff just took over and ran with it, and she called me and said she wanted to have this town hall. I said, it's your show, and they went into action. I think all of her staff, they all round of applause. So let me just tell you my story in terms of our involvement. Elise and I and Ken Marlborough, you know, we're retired. And we have time during the day to go to meetings. And we don't go to everything, but we are nosy. And this, I want to share my story because this is a resident, and we talk about civic engagement, and that's basically what we were doing, becoming civically engaged. And once we went to, at the first meeting we were invited to, was a broad meeting with county supervisors from all over California. Toniac and Chevelle called and said, Miss Ellen, you need to go to this meeting, Census 2020, it's gonna be all these. And I said, oh, okay. So I showed up and I learned so much. I think Roberto was there. He did our first presentation there, and I'm like, I'm still confused, but at least I walked away with knowing that there's a bell that was ringing that says, hey, we need to get involved. And then from there, we attended meetings with the United Way group. I think it was another group at first, and then United Way. So let me just say to you that this process for someone who was not involved in 2010 census was confusing, but I said, you know what, this is important enough. Elisa and I and Ken said, this is important enough. We just gonna hang in there and we're gonna figure this thing out, right? And we did. We went to meetings after meetings, and we got involved. But what I was concerned about was the fact that you all were not included. That's right. And I was concerned about that. And we had a BAPAC meeting and had a kind of a review. Roberta was there and Chris Wilson was there, and it was kind of like the introduction. But this train was moving, and I'm like, wow, we got to get involved, right? And all the meetings are during the day, and most of the folks in this room that I know, they work during the day. So we were just trying to chug along. So I just got really concerned and worried, made a phone call to Dr. Weber and said, you know what? I'm an AD in the 79th, and we need to bring this together for residents in the 79th. And she said, let me take it, and we're going to roll with it. And they did, and this is why we're here today. Because 3 little old retired residents decided to stick with what we knew was an important process to the point where we wanted to make sure a lot of nonprofits knew, a lot of residents, particularly in the African American community, were involved and informed, and we can come up with a plan based on what the panel shares with us on how we're going to ensure that every resident in AD of the 79th, and every resident is counted correctly. Every population is counted correctly. You may have saw some of my Facebook posts. I was just talking about, you know what, there are groups of populations that are not going to get involved, and then all the controversy on television with the Trump administration, it all was of concern, but we still have to be counted because there's too much at stake. So that's what brings us here today. And I thank you all for coming, and we're going to get started because we have a lot to cover. I think this is going to be worth your 2.5 hours. You're going to go out of here empowered, engaged, informed, and ready to get involved. Is that all right? Thank you so much. So I'm going to bring up, and I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to bring up the overview of 2020 census. It's going to be presented by Roberto from the U.S. Census Department, Michelle from United Way San Diego, and Connie from the San Diego Census Center. And I just want to introduce Roberto. He's been helping me figure this thing out, from how do we apply for jobs, to how do we apply for contracts, to how do we get engaged with other organizations. And Michelle came on board as the project lead for United Way when they were awarded the contract. And then I met Connie through Nora Vargas at one of her events, and Connie Hernandez is the regional manager for Census 2020 for San Diego and Imperial Valley. She is like the one. And I met her through Nora Vargas. So we have 3 power hitters here that really have the information that we need in order to make sure we create a plan so that we can carry out the Census 2020 in an effective, efficient way. Let's give them a hand.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here today. So excited to see a lot of new faces that I have not seen before. And this, again, could not been, this could have not happened without the support of Ms. Ellen Nash, so really grateful. As she mentioned, my name is Roberto Garcia. I'm a representative for the U.S. Census Bureau, and today I'll be talking to you about people, money, and power. Next slide. Why do we do a census? Well, I can tell you that we do a census because it is in our US Constitution. The US Constitution indicates that there has to be a head count of everyone living in the United States every 10 years. This includes people of all ages, races, ethnicities, citizens, and non-citizens. The first census was conducted in 1790, and one has been conducted every 10 years since then. And why does it matter? Why do we need to know who lives in our community? As Dr. Weber indicated, it determines how many seats each state has in the House of Representatives. The federal government distributes $675 billion every year. Those are your taxes, my taxes. The state of California receives roughly $115 billion of that allocation. And it's not just about funding, it's not just about political representation, but it's also about a lot of other things. Funding goes to schools to fund local lunch programs. There are Head Start and after school programs that are funded specifically based on census populations. You can see here that census data is used for many, many things. For example, local governments use this information to determine if we need more roads. Do we need to build more schools? Are there enough hospitals in our community? We here in San Diego County also are in a fire-prone area, so we have to know how many people live in our communities in case we need to evacuate them. So as you can see, census data is used by many, many agencies. So the 2020 census is going to be monumental in the sense that it'll be the first time that people can respond in many different ways. Everyone is going to be receiving a postcard that is going to ask you either to take it online or via a call center. So here you can see that we have 4 different ways in which the enumeration will happen. First and foremost, we want individuals to take the census questionnaire online. You can take it at the comfort of your home and your computer. You can also do it on your smart device. You can call in to one of our call centers. We will be supporting 13 languages, including English. We are in a multicultural society, so we want to make sure that we're being cognizant of people's culture. If people do not self-respond either via phone or via the internet option, then we will be sending out the traditional paper form that most people are used to seeing. And if all else fails, then at that point we will send out an enumerator that will go out and knock on someone's door to conduct an in-person survey. So again, I just want to here emphasize that we want to make sure that you are able to take the census questionnaire online. That is the preferred method that we are asking everyone to please do, because this way we don't have to send someone out to your household to ask you questions, very simple questions. As I indicated before, everyone is going to be receiving a postcard that they can use to take the census questionnaire online or via phone. There will be a total of 5 postcards that will be sent out. And as of today, April 1st, 2020 has been designated as Census Day. So April 1st, no joke, that is the day that we want everyone to respond. So hopefully everyone can encourage your friends and family members to take the census. The paper form will be in Spanish and in English, and we always get questions about why is that. Well, we can tell you here that it's determined based on census tracts, and then also where the population speaks more than 20% of the population speaks Spanish, but more importantly, no member of the household over 14 years of age speaks English very well. So this is the reasoning why the paper form is both in Spanish and in English. We want to let you know that your information is protected for a period of 72 years. We would never ever distribute your information to any department of the government, whether it be enforcement like the FBI or immigration services like ICE. Everything that you provide to the U.S. Census Bureau is kept confidential for a period of 72 years. Also, I want to mention that there are stiff fines as well as legal repercussions for any census employee that distributes information. And more importantly, we do take a life oath to protect everyone's information. So one of the cool things about the census, and I think it was brought up before, is that we do need a lot of people for this effort. And I can tell you that the U.S. Census Bureau is hiring. We will be opening 3 offices here locally in San Diego County. We're looking anywhere from 2,000 up to 3,000 people to help us with this effort. Here you can see a few examples of the jobs and how much they pay. We think they're pretty fair for San Diego. The enumerators there, you can see getting paid about $26 an hour. So those will be the individuals going out and knocking on people's doors. So we hope that you can share this resource with all your contacts and references. Please post it on your Facebooks or share it with others. The application process is very easy. It takes about 10 minutes. It's a personality test, and you do not need a resume or reference contacts. So we are a few months away from the 2020 census. Here I just want to show you the timeline. And the reason why it's important is because a lot of things will be happening. And as it was mentioned before, the train is moving, so we want to have as many people as we can on board. The offices will be opening here. United Way is also moving forward with their efforts, and the nonprofits. SANDAG, which is the San Diego Association of Governments, is also moving forward with their efforts working with local governments. So I just want to make sure that you are aware that there's still time for you to participate and help us with this effort. So kind of what are the next steps? First and foremost, we hope that we can be ready to be counted. We want to make sure that everyone understands that it's safe, it's secure, that no repercussions will come out of participating in the census. And I think that personally, for me, aside from voting, the census is the next big thing that we can do as a community to really bring more power, more money, and more resources into our neighborhoods. If you can invite us to do a presentation, I know today was a little long, but it's usually 10-15 minutes. Are there recurring meetings where we can go and bring this message to others? Please let us know. And lastly, please share the jobs. We want to make sure that we're hiring local people that look like us, speak similar languages, so that we can build trust in our communities and bring, more importantly, more economic stimulation into our communities. So thank you for your time. I hope that we can count on you to make everyone count.
Okay, since the big question of today is where's the money? So we're going to change, I don't know, we're going to do my presentation first. Do you have that link? Yes. We're going to go to the California Complete Count first, as that addresses specific funding issues. Again, thank you so much for having us here today, especially Assemblywoman Weber and Alan Nash from BAPAC. I appreciate this opportunity to share this information. My name is Connie Hernandez, and I'm the Regional Program Manager for San Diego and Imperial Counties, and I'm also the Tribal Liaison representing the different tribes throughout the state. The California Complete Count Office is a state organization. We report to the Government Operations Agency and the Governor's Office. The Complete Count Office receives recommendations by the California Complete Count Committee that was appointed by the Governor in April 2018. The California Complete Count Committee is an advisory panel of community leaders who represent diverse populations from across the state. And this office also oversees and coordinates California's education and outreach program for 2020 census. The office also will help form partnerships, identify resources, and develop an effective outreach strategy to educate and motivate California's hard-to-count to self-respond in Census 2020. Go to the next one. The next one. I think Roberto mentioned this, or he does at many presentations, and our focal point, our task, the one important thing that we want to ensure is that everyone is counted once, only once, and in the right place. Our mission is, the goal is to ensure all Californians get right access and assistance to the census questionnaire at the right time, staffed by the right people. Separation of roles. I think this is really important because many times as Roberto and I make presentations, there is not a clear understanding of the U.S. Census Bureau and the state. So we'll expand on the Census Office's approach, and our approach is to educate, motivate, and activate. Okay, I don't know what that is. We won't leave the fate and future of California, let's see, in the hands of the Federal Commerce Department of the U.S. Census Bureau. No, that's not it either. Back. Go back. There you go. In other words, the U.S. Census Bureau has their job. Their job is the enumeration process. Their job is to have partnership specialists throughout the area helping organize communities, but we all work in partnership. The role of the state is to provide the funding and provide, encourage partnerships, collaboration to make sure that everyone is counted. We create and communicate the statewide strategy for census outreach, to identify gaps and develop necessary tools, disseminate best practices, and the main word here is always coordination of the overall mobilization of funding. When we talk about what's at stake, I think Roberto covered this already in terms of power and money, congressional representation, reapportionment, and redistricting, and Assemblywoman Weber made reference to this as well. And the money, of course, of the almost $700 billion, and our share being $115 million. Now, the roles and responsibilities, again, of the USCB, the United States Census Bureau, they're responsible, again, for the decennial census, actually doing the count. The state of California, what we're doing is coordinating with California's education and outreach program targeted at the hard to count. We will help form partnerships. We have been doing this, identify resources, and develop an effective outreach strategy. And we do this by the participation of local government, the local complete count committees, and our partnership specialists, especially Roberto, has played an important role in this. And this is formed at the local and community level. Also by established county and city governments, community leaders, and volunteers. We also cover the tribal governments throughout the state as well. And on here it says the ACBOs, the regional ACBOs. That means the area community-based organization. And United Way has taken the leadership on that, and then other local community-based organizations, and of course the media. When you look in terms of who is the hardest to reach, and that's what all this funding about, that's what all this collaboration is about, to target these specific segments that are traditionally hard to count. Latinos, African Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, Middle Eastern and Northern Africans, immigrants, refugees, farm workers. What's the matter? People with disabilities, LGBTQ communities, areas with low broadband subscription rates, or low or no access to broadband. Veterans, seniors, older adults, children 0 to 5. This is a huge segment. Also households with limited English proficiency. I don't know if many of you that have attended various meetings are familiar with SWORD. This is a state outreach and rapid deployment platform. And that helps us in determining where the hard to count numbers are. It's a very detailed platform in that we not only use it to identify these areas, but also as a reporting tool, so that 10 years from now, when we have the next decennial, there will be a history written. And now we're starting from scratch, and it seems that we do this every 10 years. But with the SWORD platform, we'll be able to monitor not only what we did, how we did it, what communities were covered, look for best practices, look how we can improve 10 years from now. So this is a very important tool that we've used, not only to identify the hard to count, but lock into various other sectors that we're trying to reach. Best practices for 2020 based on 2000 and 2010, what we're trying to take into consideration is understanding the new and challenging environment. We try to act as convener, collaborator, coordinator. We want to leverage existing outreach opportunities, meaning that some groups, some community-based organizations that are doing outreach or plan to do outreach for census, they say, do we have to create a whole new plan? Many times, a lot of community-based organizations have their plans already in place. You are the experts in reaching the communities, so you can tell us what's the best plan in terms of piggybacking on events that already take place. The other thing is accountability and performance. You know, once the state makes such a huge investment, along with that comes accountability, and I think Roberto referred to this in the amount of money. You know, the larger the investment, the greater accountability. It's your tax monies, it's my tax monies, and we have to be respectful of that. We're also paying a lot of attention to make sure the language access is there and the intersectoral collaborations and partnerships. So we're already here at the best practices. We want to make sure about the statewide regional readiness, needs assessment, and that's what the local complete count committee is focusing on, local and the community and faith-based outreach. We talk a lot about trusted messengers. Well, they represent folks that have a history of working in the communities, that have that reputation, so that when they deliver the message, it's going to be effective. Community and the school-based curriculum as well. We're working on that in the sector and state agency outreach and the media campaign. So we have state implementation plan workshops. I don't know if many of you here attended the convening that took place, I believe it was January the 9th of last year. And what they did at that time is said the census is coming, this is what we're doing, this is our plan, and they gave information about that. That was the convening. Now we have changed the name to Implementation Plan Workshop. And we are holding ours in San Diego on Friday, August the 16th. We're just sending out the save the date cards on Monday. And the important thing about this is this gives us an opportunity to bring folks like you that are here today together, folks that are already working on these plans together to showcase the work. So I hope that many of you here will be able to attend. And we just learned that Governor Newsom will be here, and the Secretary of State will also attend, which is huge because they have not been able to attend any previous implementation plan workshops, but they will be here for San Diego's. We've had a phased approach to our campaign. As you can see, phase one was to convene, collaborate, and that was the reason for that convening in July, to build capacity. Now we're in phase two, where we're working harder to educate, motivate, and that's going to go through this time frame. And July, we're trying to motivate folks every way that we can, and really need the help and support of folks like you that know different organizations that can help us. Phase three, which is January to March, that will be the activation period. And it seems as if the census is a long time away, but I mean, time is just flying by, and before you know it, it'll be time for that self-response for phase four in March through April, a time to be counted. Phase five will be the non-response follow-up, indicating that it's not too late, that we can still participate. Phase six will be the assessment and reporting part, when we can look back and see what worked, what didn't work, best practices, so we can enter all that information for the next go-round. So we can skip by this, we went over this already. And the collaboration with partners, not only community-based organizations, we encourage, but education, early education, 0 to 5, K through 12, higher education, health services, labor unions, faith-based, business, corporate, technology and innovation, entertainment, rural, chambers, government, cities, counties, state, media, and nonprofits, of course, and CBOs. We have not a regional program manager, but a sectors manager that works out of Los Angeles that is targeting many of these sectors on a statewide basis. And we look to you again, if there's folks or organization within any of these categories, you can contact me. I will talk to Marcy Kaplan, who is a sectors manager, to see how they can get involved, not only on a statewide, but on a local level. I think we've gone over the trusted messengers, and I think what people really want to talk about is the budget. So, go to there. As Assemblywoman Weber indicated, the budget for California's census is an unprecedented amount. Governor Brown set aside a little over $90 million before he left office. Governor Newsom's 2019 to 20 proposed budget included an additional $54 million to bolster the state efforts. The total of the proposed is $154.3 million. There was an additional amount of $10 million for LUCA, which is and then the 2018, I'm going to here. You got right here. In May, the revise, that's what I want to get to. The governor requested further funding of $4 million, $2 million for the Native American and tribal government outreach, $900,000 to bolster our SWORD tool that will provide block level data and help outreach contractors and partners in canvassing. And also the $1 million for the California Housing and Population Sample Enumeration. And as I said before, this is an unprecedented amount that we're hoping that will help get the right count. I think you have to go to the other one. It shows the slides here what the distribution is. The $8.7 million for the outreach itself, the media campaign, that's where you get the most in those two specific areas. The administration, we're determined to keep that low, and you can see that on the chart as well. The regional ACBO, and that's a regional administrative community-based organization, and the state agency outreach. The way they organized it on the state level is the state was organized into 10 different regions. As you can see, we're here in Region 10, and that includes San Diego and Imperial counties. The regional administrative community-based organization went to United Way of San Diego County, and they're working with over 100 community-based organizations in the area to bring that ground level approach to reaching the hard to count in that area. The funding strategy is always to maximize resources on the ground, which will build a strong base of trusted community voices, allow our increased in-person impressions in hard to count communities, facilitate culturally appropriate engagement within the hard to count communities. And I took the question from that other BAPAC member that you raised, if there's no one on this stage that looks like you. I will take that to heart. We're hoping to increase our resources. Right now, I'm the only game in town when it comes to California complete count representation. We're hoping to increase that, and I will deliver your message to the folks that make those decisions. Also, we're here to facilitate culturally appropriate engagement with hard to count communities, break down language access barriers for non-English speaking population, help combat disinformation campaigns. That's a real challenge for us when you take into consideration what the political climate is. You take into consideration this whole issue of the citizen question, which at this point, it's not going to be on the form, but whatever happens afterwards. I firmly believe that a lot of the damage is already been done. So it's up to us, folks representing the state, folks representing the federal government, community-based organization, everyone that has a stake in this, and this includes all of us, to help communicate the message that we have to overcome that it's important to participate. Our future is on the line. By not participating, it's just going to make all of what we're going through right now on a political climate basis even worse. So please help us with that. I talked about the implementation plan workshops. These have been going on throughout the state, and it's really important to help spread the word about this. We're going to have 2 sessions in the morning. We're going to invite all community members. It's open to the public, elected officials, and as I said, the governor and the secretary of state plan to attend. This is outstanding in that this will be the first IPW that they will come to. So it's our opportunity to shine, to talk about the work that's being done in San Diego, and well, this one will be just in San Diego. So you talk about what you can do right now. We have designate census coordinators, and that's been to a certain extent done with a local CCC. You'll hear more information about them. And what you can do on the ground level is continue to build partnerships, collaborative with counties, cities, local complete count committees, and Michelle from United Way will go over how we're organizing that and see how you can play a part in that. Identify your hard to count communities, because we're operating on data that happened 10 years ago. And you and I both know those numbers are changed, communities change, the whole profile of communities change. It's not just 2010, so we have to look to you to identify those changes and help us reach that population that we're trying to serve. So you can sign up for our mailing list. You get information about everything that's going on with the census, and if you go to California Census website, everything is listed, who you can contact, how you can contact them, RFPs that are going out, the deadlines, anything you want to know, and I will leave my cards here as well for any of you that want to contact me for specific information. But in closing, again, I just want to emphasize that our goal is to ensure that all Californians are counted, that Californians get the right access and assistance to the census questionnaire at the right time, staffed by the right people. And I am taking your recommendations to heart. I hope you've all subscribed to our mailing list. That's the information is there. And I hope you follow us on social media.
Things to note before, I'll introduce myself in just a second, but to note, Roberto said it, Ellen said it, the train is moving and it's moving fast. All of this work has been happening super fast, not that that means that anyone shouldn't have information on it, but I came on super, super fast, and I've been surprised by the amount of work that is involved with this and the layers. So I hope that the way that we've been talking and we continue to talk and by the end of the conversation, that it's clear how everyone's coming together and where there's opportunities to engage and to do this work and to be in the right place and to make sure that this all happens how it needs to. None of this work is done. I would say I'm going to talk maybe about a strategic plan and that sort of thing. None of the work is set in stone. We do not have community partners on yet. There is a lot of space to engage still, an opportunity, and I'll get to a couple other things too, but I just wanted to say there's room. So please, I'm so happy that everyone's here, that that's come together to learn about what's going on and how this process happens, because without you all, none of it happens. So there's that. So my name is Michelle Silverthorne. My title is Project Lead for Count Me 2020. I work through United Way of San Diego County. And there's so many things I want to just say right away too. So I'm going to go with the slides and I'll make sure it's all covered. So next slide. So Count Me 2020. So Count Me 2020 is a coalition of 150 community-based organizations and civic groups that are coming together to ensure a complete and accurate count for the San Diego and Imperial County regions. So we've used the words ACBO, we've used the words hard to count. So Region 10 is San Diego and Imperial counties, so we have funding to work in both counties. I'm going to primarily talk about just San Diego because that's where we are right now. But anyone is open to join this coalition. Anyone can come, can learn, can see what's going on. I will say, how come I didn't know about this either? I know that 2 weeks before the application was due to the state to receive the funding for Region 10 is when I learned about this. That's when United Way came on. So within 2 weeks, we were applying for $1.66 million to ensure we could have it at the region level. So it all happened really quick. So our focus, the work of the coalition, is to reach the hardest to count. So we know that there's up to 1.2 million individuals that are considered hard to count in the region. We're organizing. So nurturing a culture of trust, engagement, buy-in, and civic participation, aiming to reach, educate, innovate, and activate individuals who are traditionally excluded and undercounted. So we're coordinating with governments, cities, businesses, other efforts. Everyone is welcome to join the coalition to ensure the communities get proper representation and funding distribution. So a lot of this background has been talked about. I'll just point out there's a couple other things. Again, we're coming together. We're committed to a fair and accurate 2020 census count. To ensure that public safety and community resources, that we receive a fair share of federal funds, and that we know that this determines political influence and representation. These other 2 points have been talked about, but we know that there's $675 billion that are coming at the federal level. As well, we know that the census data is used by businesses, local governments, and others to determine things like jobs, healthcare centers, schools, and different resources that we use in the community. Region 10, as I mentioned, so San Diego and Imperial County, is the hardest to count in California. So some of these things we don't need to tell you, we already know. We've talked about undercount. San Diego is the 21st hardest to count. There's 58 counties in the state of California. And historically, there's substantially been an undercount of people in communities that are considered hard to count. So our answer to this is to create this coalition. We know, we've been saying 100, but I counted the list again. There's 150 different organizations that have engaged on some level for this work. That being said, there's a lot more organizations in San Diego than just 150. On the mailing list, there's about 300 individuals, but that's not a very big piece of what is San Diego, so there's a ton of space to engage, and I know that there's a lot of information, knowledge, energy that needs to come together for this work. As mentioned, United Way of San Diego County was awarded the funds as an administrative community-based organization. They have the money to make sure the communities, they're administering the funding, right? So they're not leading the process necessarily, not exactly deciding how this whole process happens. That's what the community-based organizations are for. That's what the coalition is for, to guide that funding into the communities so that we can ensure the complete and accurate count. So we've been saying HTC, hard to count. What does that mean exactly? So this is the California Hard to Count Index. So there's a number that's been assigned to census tracts, and it's based on multiple demographic, housing, and socioeconomic variables that correlate with being counted. Some of these things are low response scores from past census, population groups with increased risk of being undercounted, and then households with lack of adequate internet access. And a couple of barriers to this too, as far as being hard to count, and again, we've talked about these, I think that we know them. Distrust of government, political climate, fear, language access, electronic or internet access, concern regarding confidentiality. These are all things that we've mentioned already. Homelessness or different living types of situations. Some people have just never been asked and just not included in the count, and this relates to 0 to 5-year-olds too. So we saw this list with Connie's slides. This is what the state of California is focusing on for their outreach and education. It's these populations. I won't read them again. It's the same list that Connie mentioned earlier, and that I think that we're becoming familiar with. But I just wanted to make sure to touch on why they're saying what hard to count is, what HTC relates to. So during this work, like when we submitted the RFP to the state to receive the funding, we looked at the hardest to count census tracts. So there are 205 out of the 600 plus census tracts that are in San Diego that have been designated as hard to count. In North San Diego County, there's 48 census tracts. In South San Diego, there's 50 census tracts that are considered hard to count. This is also the unincorporated areas. And then the city of San Diego has 107 census tracts that are considered hard to count. This is a map, the darker the red, the harder to count. And the next slide has, go ahead to the next slide. So I don't know if you can see the line, but I did try to focus on District 79, so you can see that it's the harder to count up there in the Linda Vista area, Mira Mesa, La Mesa, and then down into Bonita. And I have another slide for this that we'll look at a little bit more in depth, just for fun, if you guys like that sort of thing. We know, again, that we've mentioned the languages that we need to focus on, and so the top languages that information will be available in is Spanish, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Chinese, Arabic, Korean, Filipino, Farsi, Japanese, Mandarin, Russian, and then Chaldean. So what is it that we're doing? What is the coalition working on? So the main points of the project, and again, this is overarching, this is not set in stone, we don't have specific, this is exactly what's gonna happen. Our focus, the roadmap is to achieve an accurate count, right? To mobilize expertise and uplift evidence-based approaches, to promote access to holistic support resources, strengthen cultural bonds, and respond to language needs. And we know that the key is to outreach through existing infrastructure and community partners. Can you go back? One more. Okay. Oh, next one. All right. So trying to be so efficient. So that we know that the community is considered the trusted messengers. They have the deep relationships and knowledge of the critical populations to ensure all are counted. Right? We all agree with that. I think that's been noted. So this is really broad. I know it's a lot of text on this slide, but these are the types of things that will happen through outreach and education, places that you can go to think about either to participate and support the outreach and education or to go and get information itself. So events. So the organizations that will come on will have, there's events that happen all around. I know that the health fair is coming up, so having a census table there, an opportunity to share information, or there might be census-focused events specifically, like we are at here today. Direct outreach, so going one-on-one, door knocking, that sort of thing. Training and education, so actually holding larger events. I was going to mention earlier, does this look familiar to anyone? Has anyone ever seen this? This is from 2010. So there was a training at Hoover High School in 2010. There was 300 plus community members that attended, and this was just some of the swag that they had. I don't know why I still have it. It's actually to clean your computer. So. But it's from Census 2010. But so there'll be larger trainings and education opportunities. The assistance centers. So this is something that will be led by community-based organizations. You all know where people gather, where people come together, where the best place to share information or to actually have some sort of electronics, a tablet or something else so that someone can use that electronics so that they can complete the questionnaire. And then just general promotion, so having fun things like this. So some of the other questions have been asked about money or how these organizations are getting involved or what does this look like. So subcontract applications. So we had an application process that was opened. All of the funding is not going out at once. So San Diego and Imperial counties together received $1.66 million. We know that there's a lot of work ahead of us. We know that we have to make sure that everyone's in place. We mentioned those 205 census tracts. We need to make sure that we have resources and different things in those areas. So there's community-based organizations that will be working on the ground, receiving funding to ensure that we're able to do this work. Can you just go back to see if there's anything else? So as I mentioned, the proposed work is enter across Region 10, focusing on those hard-to-count populations. And when we're considering the subcontracts, like who will be doing this work, the best way to look at it is to consider organizations that have a track record working with the populations that we're looking at in the areas that we need them to be, also with movement building or coalition building. So sometimes these help to kind of clarify how this all looks. Along the very bottom is the foundation of this work. It's the Federal Census Bureau, the state office, and then SANDAG, which is local here in San Diego and Imperial counties. Going up from that onto the right side here are work groups. So we have a loose structure that's in place on how we want to accomplish this work, and these are the work groups that we have in place currently. We know that there are other partners that will be alongside of us as far as other statewide contractors that will be supporting this work. And of course, we can't do it without other community partners and regional volunteers. The community-based organizations just up from that will be the ones directing how this work happens, what it looks like. There is an executive committee that's 11 community members, and they are from throughout the community. I can share names or places, but they have been taken thoughtfully and to ensure that there is representation and that people are on board so that we know what's happening when we're looking at this work. And then the top level again is that ACBO, so the Administrative Community-Based Organization, is United Way. They are managing the funds but not directing how this work happens. So I'm going to stop there. There's some other slides that I have because there's some other panel sessions, so I'll come back to those later, but my contact information is up there. Connie mentioned the August 16th date, so that is that implementation plan workshop, and as she mentioned, it's open to everyone to attend. At that time, we hope to have the community-based organizations on board that will be doing this work, and I'll mention some of those a little bit later as well. And if you have other information, if you want to know more about what's happening with the Count Me 2020, you can go to the webpage or to Facebook. I think that's all I want to say about the work on the ground, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I know there's a couple people that mentioned they've done this work before, been engaged in it. The one thing that I've felt from the start of this work is that we're creating this new wheel because it's 10 years later. So if someone's been doing this work and they know how to do it well, please come on board, because we need all the support we can to ensure that this happens right and that we have a complete and accurate count.
BAPAC is sponsoring its 10th annual walkathon on next Saturday, starting at 7:30 at Choyas Lake. It's our fundraiser, our main fundraiser for the year. It allows us to have meetings like this where we can serve, a piece of something, a piece of pizza, and also hold meetings like this. ECC has been open and gracious to allow us to use the facility, but the fundraiser allows us to fund our meetings. So if you can participate, or if you don't want to walk with us, you can at least go online if you could at bapacsd.org, hit the donate button, and just go ahead and give us a little something. We appreciate that because it does help us to have and convene our meetings here every third Saturday of the month. So thank you all for coming. Thank Dr. Weber. She had to leave. She stayed a long time, longer than I expected her to stay after driving down from Los Angeles. But we thank her for putting this event together, this meeting. And we will be, there will be action taken. Our next steps will be convening the group that was here today. That's why we have all your names, your emails, phone numbers, and we will come up with our action plan in order to respond to some of the issues that we've raised here today. So we look forward to working with you all, but we're going to do it in a much more organized way that we ensure that all people are of color, particularly African Americans, in AD 79, in fact, across San Diego County, which are only supposedly 150,000 of us, according to the 2010 data that Roberto showed us the other meeting we had. In San Diego County, we want to make sure that we are all counted. Thank you very much for being here today.